Hi, everybody. This is Dave Walker, and I am a parent of two young gentlemen who play soccer at Campton United. And they are about to turn 16 years of age, so they are fast approaching their senior years in high school and approaching that period when they're really thinking about whether or not they want to play soccer in college. In both their cases, they do. And that has led my wife and I into just a lot of questions about, well, how does the college soccer recruitment process work? The great news is that first and foremost, we have a lot of great parents who are kind of in the same boat as us, maybe a little further down the road. One of them is with me tonight, and that's Dave Leatherberry. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, Dave, thanks for having me.
And your son is a junior in high
My
school?
son, yeah, my son is a junior in high school, and he is in the middle of the recruiting process. Still, not fully decided, but definitely, this will be helpful with the can of worms of, going down this road that is opened.
No
So,
doubt. Yeah, no doubt. And so we wanted to tap into a resident subject matter expert at Campton, and that is Coach Dimitry Soukalis. I hope I got that right. I
Did.
did.
Well done.
And Coach Dimitri is not only someone who played in college and not only somebody who personally went through the college recruitment experience, but he's actually now an assistant coach at North Central College in Naperville. And so he is about as good a subject matter expert as we could get, and somebody who actually is very, very close at hand. And so he's been willing to kind of sit with Dave and I to pepper him with questions about the college recruitment process. And what we've done is kind of broken our questions to him into two sections, which will make up two different sessions. One of them is really to try and address the questions around those who are just starting the college recruitment process. So that would be sophomores and what I'll call rising juniors who are about to transition into their junior year. And we're going to ask him questions about the college recruitment process specifically as it relates to those age groups. But then we're going to have a second session that really is more focused on juniors who are in their spring season, or seniors who are older and who are getting much, much closer to crunch time, to decision time for their college that they might like to play soccer for. So without further ado, we're going to launch into the questions, but we're going to start, Coach Dimitri, but just asking you to give us kind of the story of your college recruitment journey, from kind of the moment you thought you wanted to do it to the moment you stepped onto the pitch in the college that you ultimately played for.
Yeah. So before I jump into that, I want to thank you for putting this together. It's an idea. Obviously, the three of us have bounced around one another. And as soon as I first heard it, I'm like, I would love to do something like this. I've never been able to do like a college seminar or like sitting on some type of panel. So this will be a good introductory for me, and also have these boys have some, more resources available for them going forward. So I was telling Dave Walker, my recruiting experience was, how do you put it? There really wasn't much of an experience to it. So I played soccer my entire life. I didn't start playing club until I was maybe 9 years old, whatever the case may be. And again, now I'm kind of dating myself. This was, 15 years ago, something like that. I just turned 29. So, oh my God, even longer than that. 20 years ago. Holy crap. So I never really knew how any of this stuff worked, like how you even get to becoming like a high school player or a college player, or dare I even say a professional player. My dad played at a really high level, but that was even decades before I started playing. So I didn't really know how any of recruiting worked. I played for good clubs growing up. And then high school, I had a decent experience, but I always personally felt that I wasn't good enough to play in college. I just felt like you just had to be like the cream of the crop, basically, in order to get to that level. And come to find out, that's like the furthest thing from the truth. However, for me, though, I still didn't know how to go about any of it, and I was an all sectional player my junior and senior year, and I didn't get a single look didn't have any coaches coming out to me, anything like that. And, you know, it was funny. It didn't dawn on me until I was working a summer camp after I graduated my senior year, when my high school coach asked me, he's like, so what are your plans? I'm like, I have no idea. I legitimately have no idea. So that's kind of a bit of a background on that. I mean, I was a good player. I'm not going to say great, but it's like definitely good enough to where I could have played in college, but I just had no idea where to even begin. I didn't even know if I wanted to play in college. If it wasn't for my parents pushing me to that point to where realistically the only goal they wanted for me was just to get a scholarship of some sort, whether it was athletic, academic, whatever the case may be. So I actually went to a junior college my first year, which people don't know that about me because I just had no idea what I wanted to do. So I took kind of a gap year. And then after that, I had a few friends who I went to high school with. They were a year younger than me. They were telling me about this school that I ended up going to, which is called Trinity International University out in Bannockburn, which is Deerfield. It's really weird to explain what city it is, but it's about an hour away from at least our area, the McHenry County and even Kane County. So that was the only school I looked at. It's the only school that gave me some type of not only athletic scholarship, but academic scholarship. So they're an NAI school, which some people are familiar with and most aren't. And the ones who are probably familiar with it are because they've heard it from me now. So I will never, talk poorly about that level because I feel like it gets the stigma, which I'll get into later on, that it's not good enough. It's only Division I, Division II, and Division III that are the levels that you want to be playing at. So they were the only school that A, I looked at, and B, gave me the scholarships I was looking for. And the rest is kind of history. I played there for 3 years. I graduated in 3.5 since I spent my first year at a junior college. And I'll get further into it later on as to about like what it is that you should be looking for in a player. But I'll be honest with you, my experience was not the most positive. And a lot of that's because I just didn't know how to go about this entire recruiting process. So that's what I'm looking forward to when diving deeper into these questions, that my own experiences, or I don't know if you want to call them failures or just lack of awareness, will hopefully help these boys actually understand, okay, hey, this is what I need to be doing when I'm a sophomore, when I'm a junior, and hopefully by the time you're a senior. So right. I'm really looking forward to getting into this. And that's kind of a brief introduction of my background. So it's not the most positive in terms of helping these boys out, but trust me, in time, they've heard enough from me. And again, now I want parents to hear it. And so that's what I'm really looking to get away from this.
No, I think we appreciate that and appreciate the candor. And by the way, important to mention that what we're going to talk about is equally applicable to girls players as it is to the boy players that the boys that you coach. So, Dave, why don't you take the next question?
Sure. So you didn't have the what would be called the typical recruiting journey, but what do you think the timeline would look for, like at the coach, I guess at Trinity College, or, like you got in there fortunately after a year of junior college, but what's the timeline look like for the average college soccer coach to build a recruiting class?
They can start whenever they want to, honestly. A lot of it just depends on the level of who they are. So if they're an NCAA program, there's certain rules that you have to follow. So like, not so much like a dead period, but it's more, there are timelines that you have to follow. And again, I can't speak for Division I and Division II, because from what I understand, they are able to kind of recruit whenever, whereas Division III, we are as well with the college I'm at, but there are certain flexibilities, I guess, you have between all of them. So to use our own program and how we begin. So we had been looking at 2022s as early as last summer. We try to take it 1 year at a time, and that's typically what the standard program will do. However, Division I programs, they'll be looking ahead. They'll be looking at 2023s as soon as they honestly probably start looking at 22s, because you start to see now that the USSF a few years ago, they implemented that new birth year change where, okay, for example, for these boys, 2004s now have their own age that they have to play in. Well, 2004s can be separated by seniors and juniors.
Right.
2005s, juniors to sophomores. So colleges understand that now, but that's why they're already starting to look ahead in terms of, okay, what preparation do we want from our 2023 class? Maybe not so much 2024 class right now. NAI schools, they're already looking at freshmen. They're actually allowed to talk to freshmen. Not that they intentionally do it, but they keep tabs on certain players. But Division III, we're not allowed to talk to freshmen. We try not to talk to sophomores. And then again, Division I and Division II programs typically follow the same suit because we're all NCAA programs. So that kind of answers that. But at least the timeline, like I said, schools, they're always looking a year ahead. So right now that we're looking at 2022s, even though 2022 season's quickly approaching, we're still looking at players. But again, now we're going to start slowly diving into 2023s. And I like to think the average coach will do that and the average program will do that as well, regardless of what level they compete at.
So safe to say that they're working, somewhere in a window between 18 to 24 months out from the day that class would kind of arrive on campus and start playing soccer. Is that fair?
Yeah. To simplify. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start with probably the most critical moment, which is when our sons or daughters declare to us as parents that they would like to play college soccer. And maybe they declared that at age 6, and maybe they declared that at age 17. I think it can come at any moment. But what are some of the key questions that we should help them ask of themselves or ask of their coaches? What are some of those things that get the whole process started on the right foot?
So I have 2 questions that I kind of sat around on, and I thought, okay, I think these 2 will help you as a parent ask a player or a kid holistically what it is that they want. So the 2 I have are, what do your priorities look like right now? Meaning, what kind of lifestyle do you live? And do you honestly feel that lifestyle is going to help get you to the next level? So meaning, what are you doing not only just on the field, but off the field as well, whether you're staying on top of your academics already, if you're putting in the work, say in the weight room, if you're doing stuff such as maybe individual training and anything like that to kind of better yourself as a player, but to also get in the mindset that, hey, if I'm going to play at this level, I need to take this more seriously. And again, it's little habits like that I think will help a parent understand, okay, is my son or is my daughter actually ready for that level? So that's kind of, I guess, question 1 that I had. The second one is, what do you want to gain from the experience that college could present? So do you want to be a part of say, if you want to go Division I, do you want to ride the bench or do you want to actually be able to play? Now, meaning if you ride the bench, but you're on a really good team, will you enjoy that type of experience? Some kids, you'd be surprised, would be bought in on that. If you told them 10 years ago when they were, 7, 8 years old, hey, you can play Division I soccer. However, you're not going to see a single minute, but you're going to be on a national title team. What do you think they would say? Some kids would be, hey, I'm all for it. However, I don't know a single kid like that. And I just feel like, not that it'd be a waste, because there's an experience you can get out of that too. There's a brotherhood, there's a community that you get out of it. But that's a question I would be asking my son or daughter if I had one. But again, for you guys, it's the same thing. What kind of experience do they want to get out of this? But again, they also have to be realistic with themselves. And that's something I think some players really struggle with. And unfortunately, some parents struggle with as well. Meaning, hey, every single parent wants their kid to be a Division I player and be the star. But in reality, that's not always the case. So sometimes as a parent, you might need to take a step back and understand, hey, do I see my kid playing at a certain level right now? Is my kid actually good enough to play in college? And if parents ask me that question, I love that question because I'll tell them immediately yes, because there's a program for everyone. Now, after that, though, we will dive deeper into this. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but the experience is really what college is all about. And I'm fairly certain you two guys went to college, but again, maybe weren't soccer players. There's a difference between being a student athlete and just being someone who's just, doing their 4 years basically of undergrad. And, maybe they'll take part in clubs, any type of extracurricular activities, but it's a grind. And are those kids ready to do that? Again, that's where I think the club environment we've created, and I hope their high school environments have set them up for that kind of success, because now they'll understand by now, okay, I definitely want to play in college. And if they don't appreciate something like this, then maybe we probably shouldn't be asking this question in the first place.
Interesting that neither of your questions to ask were really how skilled a soccer player is my kid, and which I actually think is impulsively what all of us would like to ask is that are they going to be, do they have sufficient skills to play at a college level? Mm-hmm. I like the fact that what you're asking is no, are they the kind of kid who can mentally and physically prepare to play at that level? And that, I think, is a great starting question. You mentioned priorities. Dave, you have a question about kind of the priorities to set at an early stage.
Yeah, that's right. So you say your kid decides they want to play in college, and they answer those questions and they know what they're looking for. So they're starting on the path to recruitment. What should be their top priorities in getting started right? What are the rules for, once they answer those two questions, what are the priorities on the path to getting recruited?
So I've got a few responses for this. So I had to write them down. So bear with me here. Where do I even want to begin? Okay. So the easiest one, and I know a lot of parents have been asking me about this, putting film together. That I think is probably the hardest thing to do out of all this. And I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm not an expert in breaking down film. I've done it before, but I'm not the greatest at it. But again, I always tell parents, hey, if you can find a way to take certain clips, so whether it can even be a full game. Some coaches actually really enjoy watching full games because now they get to see, okay, what are you doing throughout the entirety of that game? We're not just seeing snippets of you just, pulling off this incredible pass or hitting this amazing shot. So that's one part, is putting film together, whether it's high school or club. Second one I have is starting to put an emphasis on what region you want to be in. Meaning, do you want to stay locally or do you want to leave home? And that's probably the first question I would ask. I actually was speaking with a recruit earlier today, and he was from the East Coast. I'm like, do you want to come to the Midwest? He's like, I'm keeping my options open, because you'd be surprised how many kids from the East or West Coast say, hey, I want to go West if I'm East and then West if I'm East. So, and then again, that just leads them to the Midwest, which is where we're at. So that's something I always ask kids is, do they want to stay local or do they want to leave? And then after that is, if they happen to, come across a coach or a certain program that they like, reach out to them and ask them, hey, do you guys have any ID camps coming up? And this could be more towards the sophomores, because there's only so much contact that coaches can make with them at that point. But again, it also doesn't hurt juniors to be doing the same thing as well. And seniors, obviously, but I hope by now seniors would understand that, hey, I probably should have been doing this beforehand. So maybe a year prior to me doing it now, maybe when I was a sophomore or when I was a junior. Because again, that's really the easiest way for a kid to get seen, basically. So I would make that a priority again. And then with those ID camps, if they're personalized, so meaning if it's like a school specific one, typically they offer like visits and stuff like that. And that's something else I would put on a kid to try to do early and often. Go on school visits, whether it's official or unofficial, whatever the case may be. Get a feel for what the school is like, both on and off the field. Is the environment fit me? Do I want to be at a bigger or smaller school? Again, whether it's class-wise, do you want to be in a class where the ratio is 15-1 in terms of students to professor, or do you want to be in a seminar hall every single time, or a lecture hall rather, where there's 500 kids in a class compared to one professor. So that's a question I would also try to help them understand. And then again, stay on top of your academics, especially when you're an underclassman. Obviously, they don't take their testing scores yet. So that's now by the time we're seeing it now with our juniors, where, okay, now I have to start prepping for the ACT. I have to start prepping for the SAT. Again, the more preparation you put into that, the better off you're going to be when you take those exams. And then again, the school is going to see that stuff too. And they'll be like, okay, hey, that's the type of kid we want in terms of admission and stuff like that. So it's kind of a lot there. So I apologize for that. But this was a question that I thought, okay, there's a lot that needs to be explained. And so hopefully that kind of helps, players and parents understand, hey, like this is where I need to be from sophomore year to junior year and then senior year as to what it is I need to be doing when I'm a sophomore, junior, and so on.
No, that's a great framework. And greatly appreciated. Talk a little bit about the wide range of services that are out there that are easy to Google. In fact, you may have already been receiving, if you're a parent of a soccer player, you may already have been receiving emails from the recruitment agencies, recruitment counselors, services and platforms that kind of publish a player and make him available to view by all sorts of college coaches. Could you share your point of view on some of the many options of assistance that a parent can tap into for the college recruitment process?
So there's really two easy ones to begin. Depending on the club you play for, what kind of exposure is that club giving to their players? So what kind of showcases are we going to? That's probably an easy one, but that's one we have to kind of pick apart as well, which I'd be more than happy to. The other one then is recruiting profiles, which we've kind of touched on here, where there's a few that I still personally use that I've actually had. Honestly, I feel like I've had more success using those than I've actually had seeing a player play in person. Just because you can catch a kid on a bad day. You've spent an entire weekend watching him play or watching her play and be like, man, that player really struggled. But it's like, I don't want to give up on them. So I kind of go back to their player profile, which there's two that I use. There's NCSA, which is I believe the National Collegiate Sports Association. I believe that's the acronym for it. And then field level is another one that I use. It's all one word. And those are used for multiple sports. It's not just soccer, but the NCSA one, what I like about that is you work one-on-one with a consultant, with someone that's their full-time job. So they have to do the best that they possibly can to promote you as a person and a player. So it's vital that you give them as much information about you, because that's going to actually be an easy way to be like, okay, hey, this is who I am as a player. This is who I am as a person. So whether it's your educational background, your club background, anything like that. And it gets broken down from the type of player you are, whether it's someone who, you're super technical, really shifty type of player, say if like you're more of a midfielder, attacker, whatever, or if you're a defender, you're fantastic in the air, you're good with the ball at your feet. You're not afraid to do the dirty work. So I always like those two profiles. That's just me though. Because there's a few others there's College Fit Finder, which, oh my God, that's been around for years. My club, when I was in high school, actually utilized it. And I'll tell you what, I actually did hear from a few coaches there, but I didn't know how to use it. We never had anyone tell us like, hey, this is how you navigate through this website. Now that I think about that now, whereas now, oh my, that was 10, 15 years ago. So technology is a little different in terms of the way we can communicate, which, okay, now you could set up a Zoom call with your, I don't know if you want to call them advisor, consultant, whatever, on those recruiting platforms where, okay, they show you step by step as to how it works. Whereas before wasn't quite that easy. So there's still a few that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But again, those are the two, NCSA and field level, that I personally like using, and I feel are probably the easiest to navigate through. However, they do also charge you for using their platform, which is basically the consulting aspect of it that you're essentially paying for. Individual consultants, I've come across a few. It's worked for some families and some it hasn't. And the ones that it hasn't, I regret saying this, but it's like it's kind of turned into a cash grab where they're just looking to take in all the money they can because they're their own private entity, basically. They can do whatever they want to. And I just feel like some families who maybe are, not oblivious. I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's like they don't know the first thing about this. I don't personally know if that's the first route you want to take. Unless maybe it's a family friend or say it's for example, myself. I'm a club coach, but I'm also a college coach. And I tell families this all the time. I'm a free resource to you guys. I'm not going to charge you to hear any of the advice that I can, give you. Whereas some guys, honestly, they're just in it for the money. I mean, if I'm being completely honest with you. So I always encourage families to reach out to me or maybe a player if they heard from a consultant and we go through it. Whereas to be like, okay, like, hey, this person's legitimate. Their background's really strong in terms of where they've sent players and so on and so forth.
Great advice. Dave, you got the next question.
Yeah. Most of our boys have started going to college ID showcases, and they can vary a lot from, the number of coaches there, from the number of players there. Can you share your point of view on what's out there for kids, and parents to investigate?
So obviously there's college ID showcases, which is primarily run through clubs. We obviously do a few ourselves at Campton. There's obviously always, I see it when I go on social media a lot. I follow a lot of these like private pages and stuff like that where they encourage players to even go guest play for other teams where, hey, maybe they're going to like this showcase that's on the West Coast or East Coast and maybe the primary club that the kid plays for maybe just can't afford to go there. Something along those lines. I'm not crazy about that idea, but again, some people might be all for that. Any opportunity to put their kid out there and to get yourself showcased as a player, do it. The bigger ones I harp on though, and I think I touched on them earlier, are ID camps. Again, that kind of gets away from, the team specific type of showcase. But I really think that's honestly the easiest way to go about recruiting. Now, again, there's layers that go into that too, meaning, okay, where do I see myself going? If it's a school that's out of state, can I afford to do that? Or could I maybe wait to see, hey, is my club going to maybe be in that certain region? And I could start to reach out to a coach and be like, hey, I'm going to be at so-and-so event. I'd love it if you can come. And maybe that way you could see me play in person. You can see me playing a full 90. You see all aspects of my game, see how I, react to certain situations. And then hopefully we can talk a little more after if I'm at that point to where I'm able to talk to a college coach.
And just so I'm clear, you think there's more power in those kind of individual college or university ID camps versus the big ID showcases where there may be 25 coaches and 250 players. That better to kind of identify who you're really interested in and make an effort to go to their camps because they all have them.
So, yeah, and I probably should have elaborated more on the showcase aspect where, we can go to one where there's going to be like 100 college coaches there, but imagine how many teams are going to be there as well. There can be almost 1,000 teams, let's just say, for example. And it's like, what's the likelihood now that specific coach is going to come watch me play when there's literally 600 fields around me and there's another field that might catch that coach's eye? Mm-hmm. Whereas compared to an ID camp, it should be more tailor-made to showcase your ability. Mm-hmm. Our ID camp at our college, we try to make it more exclusive where it's 20 to 30 kids tops, but there are kids that we've identified and we've personally invited. There can always be kids from the outside as well that, we call them diamond in the roughs where it's like, hey, where did this kid come from? And, catches our eye. I put more stock into those, to tell you the truth. But again, I'm also not saying that we shouldn't be going the route of, okay, hey, like, why are we going to all these showcases then if we're not going to get the exposure to colleges, which you will. It's just there's pros and cons to that as well, which I kind of laid out the con aspect of it, which, oh my God, if you go to a bigger one, like I said, there's going to be 100 coaches and from all levels, obviously, but then all levels of teams as well. So
Right.
you can kind of get lost in the shuffle, basically. Your team could be, and then ultimately you as an individual will suffer from it. But again, if the coach really likes you and you've put in the effort as you as the person to reach out to said coach, and they actually end up coming to watch you play and you do well, then it's a win. That's the whole purpose of these showcases then. That it's like, okay, that coach actually really cares for me then. And so now I feel kind of, I guess, solidified that, okay, hey, I'm glad my club went to the showcase because it helped me out. And in turn, helped out the college coach as well that I'm looking at, because now it gave him a better idea, or her a better idea of, okay, what am I looking at in terms of a player?
Well, let's talk about coaches for a minute. What are some of the best practices basically for kids to, particularly in their sophomore and early junior year, to reach out to coaches, to make connections with coaches, particularly for the schools that, they may have an interest in at an early stage?
So I actually wrote it down, and I think I mentioned it before. Put together some type of introductory email or message, whatever the case may be, and really sit there and be like, okay, hey, because I come across this every day. Head coaches come across it every single day where you see a message from a kid and it just looks copied and pasted, where it's like, I've sent this out to like 100 other coaches today, and it's not really, made specific for the school that I'm actually looking at. So this is where now I'm kind of going into another layer where it's like, you got to look into the school it is that you're interested in, and not only looking into the soccer program, but looking into the majors. Now, it may not apply entirely to sophomores because that's maybe a bit too premature in them understanding, okay, hey, what major do I have an interest in, because they're so young. But again, keep in mind, there's seniors that are still undecided as well. So it's just maybe kind of looking around and keeping your options open and being like, hey, okay, this school offers a certain programs that I'm looking at. And so now can I put together some type of message maybe that I can send out to these coaches that shows, oh yeah, this kid's actually really interested in my program. And in turn, the player himself or herself is actually interested in that program. So that message, again, I always keep it in two parts, academic and soccer. At least for the message of this, we're speaking about soccer. So if you can look at that, and again, location matters as well. Again, if I'm looking local, does that school offer, maybe a way for me to be close to home, or can I be close to like a major city, I guess, in terms of, okay, that school is going to set me up well in terms of internships and networks that I'm going to make going forward. We're kind of looking ahead, but I'm telling you, if you get ahead of this now, that's probably the easiest way that you're going to have success when you start to really narrow down the schools that you're looking at. So hopefully by the time that you're a senior or maybe even a junior, you've kind of narrowed it down. But those would probably be some of the tips that I would have. But again, for sophomores, just to break it down, put together some type of message. Really the easiest way is, do you guys have an ID camp coming up? That's really the easiest way for me to be like, okay, this is an easy way for me to get to introduce myself as a player, as a person. And then obviously the flip side, the coach as well. I could see that person, talk to him for a little bit, and then keep him on my radar. That's really the biggest thing, where it's like, if that kid really caught my eye as a sophomore, imagine what he's going to look like in a year when now we tell him, hey, we're really interested in you. Can you try to apply? So now we can get you in the system. We can go through the finances, get your financial aid, your packages all together. And then again, now you're kind of fast forwarding. Now you're at that junior stage where you're applying. Hopefully you're going to get the financial package you're looking for. And then by the time you're a senior, well, hopefully if everything's gone accordingly, you can commit. But again, it's not all doom and gloom if you haven't been able to get to that point, because there's seniors who haven't started any of this. Going back to my own experience, I didn't start any of this until I was out of high school. So there's really no like best practice I guess, to kind of categorize it. There's no wrong way. However, the earlier you start all this, the better. So the earlier you start introducing yourself to certain colleges, the easier this process can be, because now it can almost be like trial and error. Maybe it didn't work for me at that program, but it might work at this program though. So it's just keeping an open mind. And again, harping back on it, putting together some type of like introductory message about myself. How can I sell myself to this program? And then again, asking about an ID camp and, maybe any type of visits coming up and so on and so forth.
So Dave, you've got the next question.
Yeah. So let's say a kid, has piqued your interest, through their introduction and whatnot. From your perspective, then, what are some of the qualities the college coaches are looking for or desire in players?
So I put this down to more off the field, which can then translate on the field. So the four I had: work ethic, character, your flexibility, and time management. The time management one's the biggest one I put on, and I put it on now to the high school players. Can they balance out their schedules? If they can balance out school, soccer, and then who knows, maybe work as well, you are going to succeed with that program. The work ethic is one as simple as, hey, are you putting in the work, the extra work, right? Are you putting in the work, whether it's in the weight room or study tables, if we're talking academics now? Say you're struggling a little bit, you've got maybe not a subpar grade, let's just say, but it's like, you're better than that. What are you doing yourself to put in the extra effort to get better at it? So again, I also forgot a big one: communication. Because again, that's really the easiest way that us as coaches can help that player, that person, succeed both on and off the field. And again, I think that those are simple qualities that you can take with you as you grow into your adult years. So again, the character aspect is just more, hey, are you a team player? Are you committed to the process? Are you willing to grind to get to where it is that you want? Because again, that works both on and off the field. Are you putting in the work as well off the field to where, hey, I'm trying to get an A, I'm trying to boost my GPA? That's the easiest way to do it. So, and then flexibility. You get to the college level, and if you want to be a student athlete, you just have to be flexible. There's no other way around it. And again, schools do a good job of, and again, athletic programs do it as well, where you've got your classes in the morning, maybe into the afternoon. You might occasionally have a night class, but again, if you're going to, say, a Division III program, for example, we know school always comes first. School will always come first regardless, but we also know we don't have you guys tied to our program. You're not on some type of athletic scholarship as well that you have to maintain. And again, if you're a Division I athlete, some kids only get offered academic scholarships to be a part of a team. So now they have to maintain, say, a 3.0 GPA in order to keep their spot. And I would safely assume it works the same way at the D2 level. That's one I'm not too familiar with, but just understanding how the NCAA works, I would assume it's the same way. And then NAI, I mean, listen, I was not the greatest of students, and I still got an academic scholarship. If I'm just being totally honest about it, as long as you're not slouching, you'll be able to maintain your scholarship. But again, I kind of summarize all that, and I want to look more off the field, because again, if you're putting in that work off the field, I'm going to safely assume you're willing to do it on the field as well, and vice versa.
That's great. That's a great summary. Just briefly, on a scale of 1 to 5, we've kind of touched on these things kind of a little bit throughout, but on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is the most important or is very important, highlight videos, 1 to 5.
6.
6. Okay.
Yeah, but on a scale 1 to 5 of 5, because I'll use my own example from earlier. I mentioned before I was talking with a recruit, he's from the East Coast. What's the likelihood I'll be able to go see him play? Or what's the likelihood that someone on our coaching staff is going to be able to see him play? The easiest way, putting together a highlight video. Some coaches really, and I mentioned it before, they prefer seeing a full game. If you've got a full game of you playing, we'd love to watch it. Me personally, I don't like doing it. And the reason why is, say, for example, I'm watching said player play. He or she maybe kind of struggles throughout the majority of the game, but I catch the eye of someone else. And I'm like, oh man, that kid's better and he might be a better fit or she might be a better fit. So there's pros and cons to that as well. But again, that's just the way I look at it. Not every single college coach is going to look at it the same way. But again, scale 1 to 5, 5. Get highlight videos together. And again, I also encourage, and I like looking at these myself, where you see a kid, the video's broken down. So it's one maybe of them going 1v1, or them, the next one connecting passes, or the next one hitting shots from different angles, or defending is another one. Like it's all, I guess, position specific as well. But again, to sum it up, highlight videos are really important.
Got it. What about individual player web pages? Their own kind of freestanding page about them.
I've encountered one before throughout my, 6 years now as being a college coach. That shows commitment and it shows that you are very detail oriented as a person. At least I can't expect a high school kid to have been able to put that together, although I'd be surprised. Maybe there are some kids that are tech savvy like that. I'm going to probably assume that maybe a family member helped them out, or maybe they hired someone to do that. You're going above and beyond if you're doing that. But so I'm not sitting here saying I'm hating on it, but the one that I actually encountered before, and I actually lost out on this kid, unfortunately, from a couple years back with the school I was with before. Oh my gosh. The profile, I mean, it was easy to look at, easy on the eye. So it wasn't just like filled with like just clutter all over the place, like colors popping up and stuff like that. It was broken down by individual accolades, club accolades. It obviously had highlight videos, even broke down like what kind of accolades they had academically as well. So literally their own recruiting profile. So I guess they saved themselves a bunch of money by not going on one of those recruiting platforms that charges you to, work with a consultant or work with an advisor, whatever you want to call them, a coach, I guess. I don't mean this in a bad way. It can also be kind of self-centered as well, though, if you're putting together a profile like that. But I have mixed opinions about it. You'd have to probably ask another coach as well, and be like, hey, if you did in fact create your own page, feel free to share it. It's like, again, if it's professional, the coach is not going to look at it and just click. I'm done. I'm not taking this seriously. Because I took the kid's page very seriously because it was a kid I was interested in. So it showed me a lot about him and his character, but at the same time, they can also be kind of not tacky. Tacky is maybe not the right word, but it's like, I don't know. There's probably a simpler way you can go about highlighting yourself, I guess. So I might be all over the place with this one, but it's like, as soon as I saw that question, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have my own experience with it. And it's like, our opinions vary.
Yeah,
I guess is easy.
That's perfectly fair. At an early stage, what's the importance of lining up your references, or what will ultimately be your letters of recommendation? Is that important to do at the early stages?
Yeah. Networking is just as important in high school as it is in college, and so on after that. The better relationship you have with, whether it's your teacher, admissions counselor, coach, anything like that, the earlier you can build that type of network, that type of trust, the more your recommendation is going to look stronger when you actually get to the point where this said person who's writing this recommendation for me has seen me grow. And entail will show, okay, hey, I'm going to take that recommendation seriously now if I'm reading it, or a reference, whatever the case may be, where I've seen this person grow. I use the word holistically a lot because I don't just look at it just as a player. I want to see how you grow as a person as well. So I think it's important, super important to get those built early and often.
Dave, you've got the next question.
Yeah, so we've talked about how kids get involved in the learning process or in the recruitment process and what coaches are looking for. How should parents, and for Dave and I, how should we support our son's recruitment process? And this could apply to the girls as well. what are the do's and what are the don'ts, in your opinion?
So I actually don't really have do's and don'ts because, again, my own experience, I didn't have the help. I had help from my family, obviously, but it's like we didn't know how to go about, hey, playing soccer at the next level as well. So the best bit of advice I have for a parent is remember who's the person that's going away to this school. Is it you or is it your son or daughter? Because I feel like sometimes parents, they get lost in this process as well. And they get all tied up with, oh my gosh, this school is gorgeous. And that, that program that you're interested in, it's like, it'll set you up well for success. I just wouldn't be pushy about it. And I always tell kids, you've got to put in the work yourself, meaning I'd like for you to look into, hey, the value of that academic program that you're looking at. Is it going to be suited well for you going forward to have success? Because again, to my main point, who's the one that's going to the school? Is it you as a parent, or is it you as a boy or girl? So I don't really know if that answers the question, but it's like that was one I looked at, and I'm using from now personal experiences going through with my own nephew and just kids this age as well. And I'm hearing it from certain parents like, oh, well, we love that place. Well, did you guys all love that place, or did you love that place? So I'm not sitting here saying be hands off, but it's like, just remember who's the person that's ultimately going to the school.
Great advice. So I think in the next session, particularly for the older kids, we'll talk more about financial aid, but just give us kind of at this early stage as parents, what should we be thinking about in the form of the financial aid that may be available? And I know that's an unfair question because it's really going to be decided on a case-by-case basis, but who gives athletic scholarships, and generally how much are they or could they be? Can you kind of just talk about the long view of financial aid, particularly for those who want to play soccer?
Yeah. So first, to answer the easy part, the only levels that offer athletic scholarships are Division I, Division II, and NAIA. Some junior colleges actually do it, which I just literally found out not that long ago. Just depends on, I guess, the county that you're in or whatever, how successful the school is. But Division III, obviously, it's all academic. So how scholarships are broken down then from, soccer scholarships, it really depends on what the budget is of the program itself. So you can look at, the easiest way to do it is look at the endowment of the school. It's simple as going on Google, looking up the school, you see the endowment. If it's a super high one, odds are they've probably got more money to invest in their athletic department and entail spreading it across all of their athletic programs. The one thing that I think, and this applies more so to juniors and ultimately seniors, is your EFC, which is the expected family contribution. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but get to know it now if you don't, because unfortunately, the success that you as parents have had, say in terms of how much money you guys make, the more you make, the school is going to look at that and be like, oh, this kid can afford this school. We don't need to be giving him X, Y, and Z in terms of athletic scholarship or even academic scholarship for that matter. It's kind of an unfair process because I've seen some EFCs, guys, where they've got over $1 million. And not only that, the kid himself is a genius. And it's like, well, we get kind of tied then. We get capped basically where it's like, we know this family can afford it, more than afford it, but we also know that this he could do well for himself here. He's not just living, or she's not living off of, the family coattails basically of all the success that they've had. Like they've put the work in themselves. So that's something that I always harp on that I think maybe I probably shouldn't be saying, but it's like, you'll come across it at some point when you go through the admissions process, because again, Division III, we work with admissions to be like, okay, hey, like said kid can afford to pay this much. How can we work with that? So it gets broken down by your academic scores. And, there's always little scholarships that you can look into that, if you're a minority, for example, some schools will give you nearly a full ride for it, which again, you just got to figure that out for yourself. And again, the more questions you ask, the better with your admissions counselors, at least at the college level. Division I, Division II, and NAI, like I said, it's broken down. You can obviously get both academic and athletic. It just comes down to how much the program itself can basically afford to give you. If you're cream of the crop, if you're this absolute stud, like 5-star recruit, they're going to throw the house at you basically. Division II, they only offer limited athletic scholarships. I think it's up to, 9 is what I think it is. Don't quote me on that. That's something I'd have to look up myself. So again, you might see a roster of 30-something kids. And remember, a third of them might be on an athletic scholarship. The rest are on academic, or they might even be walk-ons. So it's stuff like that you have to kind of look into. And again, I may not be answering this question entirely because it's like every single program varies. Right.
No, I appreciate that. And I knew it was kind of an unfair question, but I do think that, just if nothing else, to kind of set an expectation that is realistic about, hey, don't assume that because your kid is going to play soccer in college, they're going to get a full ride.
Right.
That's not a good assumption to make. So we have kind of 2 wrap-up questions. Dave, why don't you take the first one?
Sure. So what should our sons and daughters expect and not expect from the recruitment process? Is there anything that, like any other surprises where they're, that we haven't talked about yet?
I kind of went back and forth trying to answer this question. And I think I've said it enough now. The earlier you do stuff, the more success you're going to have going through this process. So for example, if a college coach tells you to apply, you should probably listen to them, because there's a thing called deadlines that certain schools have to where, hey, if we're pushing for you, and coaches won't say this, you kind of have to maybe dig into them a little bit and be like, hey, maybe not so much ask it like blindly, where it's like, hey, why are you asking me to apply right now? I probably wouldn't ask that question, but it's more something along those lines where it's like, okay, why am I doing this? It's because you could probably get more in scholarship. Schools try to hide that fact, which I don't understand why. I to this day, I've been at 2 Division III schools and 1 NAI school. Every single one varies in terms of the deadlines that they have. You're always able to apply. So for a kid, for example, if they're a senior, I actually played with a few of them where they literally didn't apply until the summer heading into their freshman year of college. So again, there's no late time to this, and it kind of goes into the last question, but the expecting and not expecting, obviously don't expect a full ride. That's the likelihood of that happening. It's possible. I'm not saying that it isn't, but it's hard. It's really hard to get to that point. But again, if a coach tells you to do something, you should probably do it. That's probably the easiest advice I can give for a kid needing to do something, expecting to do something, and anything along those lines.
So last question, and this has really been terrific, and really thorough. Give us your perspective on this. If we're being realistic as parents, we have to kind of acknowledge the numbers, just the raw math of the number of kids that desire to play soccer in college and the number of positions that are actually available on the pitch collectively across all colleges. How would you suggest we manage that balance between the perseverance that, of course, we want to encourage our kids to have throughout life, our sons and daughters, and the realism about their chances of actually playing in college? Is there anything that you would suggest on how to kind of coach them, through this process of trying out really for a college program that they have their heart set
on? There's a program for everyone. And I don't mean that like kind of jokingly. There seriously is a program for everyone. Whether your skill set maybe is not the strongest right now, some schools will take a chance on a kid like that because they truly believe that, hey, we can develop this kid and make him into a stud or make her into a stud. So don't get discouraged if you feel like, hey, I'm behind my teammate right now who's getting looked at by X, Y, and Z schools, whether it's a D1, D2, D3, NAIA, even JUCO for that matter. Don't get down on yourself because, again, you have to remember, hey, there is a program for me. Now, with that being said, the realism comes in where, and I've said it once and I'll keep saying it again, you have to do the research yourself. Because the more research you do, so you brought up a good point where looking at the number of kids on a roster, I get asked that question almost every other kid I talk to because we have a fairly larger roster on our college team. There's always opportunities to play, whether it's playing on the top team, you've got reserves as well. You know, you almost use it as like a development team, basically. So again, those are questions that kids probably need to be asking. If you're trying to be realistic with yourself, don't be afraid to ask that question in the sense of, hey, why do you guys have so many numbers? Because some schools, they may need to have that many numbers. So don't get discouraged of saying, hey, that's the school that I really want to go to. But man, how am I going to stick out when I'm one of 50? You know, at some point it's like, how do you become a big fish in a small pond, basically? How can you really separate yourself? And then again, if we go back to, I forgot what question it was, but it's basically what you're doing off the field should mirror what you're doing on the field. So whether it's you're putting in the work off the field, you know, whether it's weight room, extra fitness, anything like that to get noticed by your coaches and be like, hey, like that kid's really working hard. He should be on the game day roster. She should be on the game day roster. And who knows, maybe you get minutes. The one thing we always preach is, say, for example, this kid is finally on the program that he or she wants to be on. And they see themselves, oh man, I'm not getting enough playing time. Be patient because you never know what might happen. Someone might get hurt that's ahead of you. Someone might get sick. Someone might become ineligible, unfortunately. We hope that's not the case, but you never know. Keep your head up. Again, stay positive. And again, your time will come. And if it doesn't, what did you gain out of this then? Because hopefully by then you gain the life skills that are going to set you up for success once you're done playing this game where we literally kick a ball around and hope for the best. Soccer is only like what's the word I'm looking for? It's a small part of our life, but again, hopefully should build us to get to where it is that we want, because unfortunately it's not going to last forever. Even for me, I try not to play much anymore. There's a reason why I try not to. I'd rather focus on working with kids, get to the point that, hey, they want to be successful. I want them to be better than me, be in a better position than I was when I was their age. So again, don't get discouraged. Keep your head up. And again, there's a program for everyone. You've got to put the work in though and figure out, hey, is this program the best fit for me both on and off the field? Does it fit my personality?
What a great way to wrap up. A great little bit of inspiration there at the end. Dave, any final thoughts? Any final questions?
No, this has been really eye-opening and quite a good experience. Thank you, Dimitry. Thank you, Dave, for setting this up.
Yeah, Dimitry, I think fantastic. I hope this gets lots of views. I think it's incredibly instructive. We have, for the Campton Club, we have a Google Doc, a Google Sheet, basically, that's made up of multiple resources that really Dave and I and Dimitry have all contributed to that are kind of research destinations. Some of the services that Dimitry talked about, some of the showcases that are kind of available to our kids. So there's lots of good stuff in it. We'll provide a link in the comments section for Campton Club parents. And you're welcome to take a gander at that extensive spreadsheet. Dimitry, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate, being able to do something like this. And again, I say this, my last point, don't be afraid to ask questions. Whether you're a Campton player, you're, a kid who's on the outside of the club that, happens to have a friend on this club that's really interested in playing in college, I'm always here. My phone's always available. My email's always available. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question.
Right.
So,
True in life as well, no doubt. No
exactly.
doubt.
So
So,
I'm always available. And again, I appreciate you guys taking the time to set this up. And I'd love to do something like this again if we can.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks a lot.